remember, like Bob Clark.
Rob Clark, and Joe Bordelli.
In the heart of Dallas, where legends unfold, a tale of shadows, mysteries untold, where truth is obscured in the depths of the night. The Lone Gunman podcast sheds a flickering light.
Section 107 of the Fair Use Act of 1976 provides protection to use copyrighted material for research, analysis, education, and commentary purposes. We here at Loose Moose Productions reserve that right. Now, on with the show. Here's Joe B and the Triple B. Hey, Aunt Udine, how's things in Texas?
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Hands on, Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rock on, get Joe Morelli. Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rock on, get Joe Morelli. And here we go.
And here we go.
What is up, my people? My people, welcome to the Lone Gunman Podcast. This is episode number 311. 311. Great band. I am the one half of your hosting degenerates here this evening. My name is Rob Clark, otherwise known as the Triple B, Big Bad Bob. And along with me, as always, is the ever scruffy Joe Borelli from the Himalayan Catskills. What's up, Joe?
Hey, yes, I haven't shaved in a month. It's been great. When you're in the mountains, it's whatever kind of thing. But, Mike Alpha 66 sent me a picture of his beard that he had just shaved, and I sent him a picture of mine, and he says, Mike
shaved his beard off?
Completely.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
He looks like a different person, yeah. But
I totally wouldn't recognize him.
He called my beard a rookie beard, but it is what it is, right? You can't win them all.
That's right. I hear you.
But happy to be here. As always, happy Friday. Happy hello to everyone in the chat. And let's go.
Let's say hi to everybody. What's up, Trey? Number one in. Early South to West. Big Bad Josh. Of course, Tiny Dancer. Big Claude and Aunt Udine. Aunt Udine, all hot and bothered. She should be. There's two handsome dudes on the screen right now. Moose 7 is in the house. See No Evil. Paul, Garden and Guns. Let's see. Lee, Hell Comes to Play. What's up, buddy? Ashley. Ashley's in the house. Crikey, damn right. And Bungled is in the house. Colina, Rocket Queen, is in the house. Jack is in the house. All right, man. The house is filling up. Holy Hannah. Welcome one and all to the show.
Give me 5 seconds. Ruby is trying to eat my steak that my cousin just cooked.
Oh, shit. Yeah, go ahead. While Joe rescues his steak. I just wanted to let everyone know that you may see either now or in the very near future that we have created a membership section here on YouTube. We had high and lofty goals when we created our locals deal, which is still going to be up, and we can still post some documents there, and it's good for that. But I would encourage everyone to move over here. We had a lot of logistical problems. We couldn't stream together over there on locals. And we want to bring you extra content. So I would encourage everybody to check out the membership section of the show. Where if you're already subscribed, you should see a join button on your laptop. For some reason, on the phone, it is not there yet. We had to go through an approval process, which we are approved, and it does show up on the desktop version, but not on the cell phone. And Joe has an iPhone. I have an Android. It's on neither one of them. So it's not a that way kind of thing. So we did create some perks. Joe, if you want to run through the perks and let everybody know the different tier levels. And again, nothing's changing. You still want to hang out with us and watch the show. It doesn't cost anything at all. But we did create some kind of cool perks for you guys if you would like to join the monthly deal. What's up, Robbie? Robbie's in the house from Out of the Blank Podcast. Make sure you're checking out his show.
Hey, Robbie. And sorry, I had to get Ruby because my cousin left the steak on the table. He is grilling, and of course, I am committed to the pod, so he left it on the table, and I heard Ruby trying to get up on the table to get the steak. So I apologize. But hi to everyone that Rob had mentioned, and yes,
she just wanted to lick on the leg a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, and a little update on the Cuban exile position Ruby and I are in. We are in back channel talks with, let's call her Castro.
Wow.
She's going to freak out. And she watched the last 2 episodes, and she's like, I don't like when you call you and Ruby exiles, but I mean, hey, that's what we are. But we are in back channel talks, and there are some demands, some reasonable, some not. And maybe by next pod, we will be back.
Maybe by next year, we'll see Joe finally back at home.
Yeah, Ruby's not making a great case so far on the podcast here. And I can hear her already causing trouble. So, but yeah, so
put a little Silk City on that shit. She might not eat it. Might be a little too hot for her.
It's not a bad idea, although she would just keep coming at it. So yeah, I mean, I think if you've watched the show, and I missed the beginning of what you said, we tried to do the locals membership because it was less of they took less than say a YouTube, but it was very hard because Rob and I could not go live together. Only one person could go live, and so we decided to do the memberships on YouTube, and for the people that support us, because we don't get rich doing this. I think you know that, and we spend a lot of time. So essentially, the first level is Spooks, which I like. I like that you named that, Rob. $4.99 a month, and you get some cool emojis and stuff like that. And listen, it's to support the homies. It's not really obviously for the emojis, but and then what are you laughing at?
Keep going, bud. You're doing a great job explaining the tiers.
I mean, 9.99 covert operators, and you'd get early access to new videos. I could see you. You're distracting me here.
Don't worry about me. I'm trying to find something.
Yeah.
Okay. Me and Alpha 66 had a little joke earlier, and I'm trying to find something.
Okay.
I was just chuckling.
Yeah, some exclusive photo and status updates, member-only videos, and some member-only live streams. And then for the people that could really support us, we have a Super Spies level, $24.99 a month. And in addition to everything that I just described. It will be a monthly Q&A where like we kind of bullshit over everything, JFK, maybe current conspiracies, and also topic recommendation, Rob. Pick a topic. So you could recommend a topic or a segment to us, and we will cover it on the Lone Gunman. And I just spent a lot of money, over $1,000 on the Lancer Hotel and flight. And, of course we don't get paid for that, but we do it out of love, not out of fame or possible fortune. And we know these are tough times, Rob. I mean, inflation, everything.
Yes.
So if you can support us, we realize a lot of you might not be able to, but if you can, we would appreciate it. And
we realize these are small perks, but at least you get something back, for your support instead of just blindly donating, which we're not totally discouraging you from doing. If you still want us to, or you still want to send us a super chat or whatever, that's all good and fine as well. And we appreciate it. We appreciate the hell out of it.
Every cent.
Don't get us wrong. Yes. Books cost money, internet costs money, equipment costs money, trips cost money. So we'd like to think that we bring you high quality content here at the Lone Gunman Podcast, second to none. And we are going to continue to do that for sure.
Yeah.
So like I said, if you want to, and you can, great. If you can't, we understand, and it's all good. We still love hanging out with you every Friday night and interacting with everybody. So enough of that.
All you have to do is be subscribed to chat with us. And I think we are a couple subscribers short of 1,800. So if you
all week.
watch,
I got excited for a second, Joe. It's $17.99, and then we lost somebody unfollowed. Bastards.
We lost one.
Bastards.
It happens. It happens.
I know. All right, so let's get into the show, Joe.
Let's do it.
Without further ado, I wanted to clean some things up from the last show since I forgot all my notes at work. Exactly, Paul. Good vape costs money. It's,
yes.
$25 a bottle for juice. No, you don't just form my bad habits, folks.
Oh, and Ashley is on that blueberry ice. I respect that.
Yeah, I can't do that. Those menthol icy vapes, man. Whew, they're throat burners.
Yeah.
That's just me. If you can handle it, Ashley, more power to you.
Yeah.
All right. So I remember last show I mentioned about Merriman Smith, the reporter who was in the motorcade, who got into a fist fight with another newsman in the motorcade, fighting over their satellite phone they had there in the car. And we went over everything about Merriman Smith and all his awards over the years and how they got in his accolades, and they kind of got taken away, but he ended up getting buried at Arlington Cemetery, and he wasn't a veteran. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here, but I made the mistake of saying he was snitching on the Garrison investigation directly to Hoover. It was not directly to Hoover. This is what happens when I don't take my notes home. It was actually to Cartha DeLoach, okay, who was like Hoover's fourth in command there.
Yeah.
I think he was not like number 3. And he knew him so well. He starts off the letter, "Dear Deke," and of course Deke is Carla Deke DeLoach's, nickname or middle name there. He says, "Dear Deke," not Mr. DeLoach or anything like that. So he says, "Enclosed is a wire copy," and this is from March 6, 1967. So this is during the Garrison investigation. "Enclosed is a wire copy of the story I did as a result of my visit to New Orleans. I've never seen a story with such a sticky aftermath. The nuts keep after me by telephone. In the space of a couple hours yesterday, here is what happened to me. Jack Martin called my New Orleans bureau, that's his news bureau, to say he had highly confidential information for me at no fee and that he would be dead in a week, that he was leaving his wife, and that he didn't like my story, although he had not read it, and so on. For 90 minutes, he talked to Jack Martin about this. Martin's lawyer, Tommy Bomer, called to ask for a copy of the story I had written. The office told him to go buy a paper. I like that. That's a good answer. You want a copy of the story? Go spend a freaking nickel in the box, Jack. All right. David Lewis called ostensibly to complain about my story as well, but to offer to turn over to us evidence of a Washington plot to discredit Garrison. Martin incidentally said he was taking a number of pills and suffering from increasing numbness of his extremities. That fellow should change brands. I love this. Garrison told me in confidence, and now I'm telling you, Mr. Deke, Mr. Third in Command at the FBI, if such there be with this man, that he was going after a group of high-status fags who at one time were quite involved with the lower echelons of the JFK plot. The arrest of Shaw, known to some as the, quote, Queen of the Quarter, Joe, and interrogation of Dean Andrews, who supposedly has represented homos in a number of cases, would seem to bear out Garrison's original intention. Martin now claims to have an unlisted phone number. It is 504-943-6949. What a dirty, dirty case. I certainly hope I don't ever have to go back down to New Orleans for anything. Sincerely, Smitty, Merriman Smith. That made me LOL just a little bit.
That was pretty funny, actually.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. So, also from the last show, I had a two-page document, Joe, that I showed everybody on here. It was a heavily highlighted story. It's a document from the one we talked about when they were looking for Jack W. Martin and Galdana in Natchitoches, Louisiana. It was a Secret Service document from John Rice, where they were looking for Jack Martin before Oswald was even arrested. Okay, in New Orleans. Yeah. So somebody dropped a dime on him. Well, there was a second page to that document, and I did not have it uploaded, but I do have it here now. And there is some interesting little pieces to this. So it goes on to say, apparently the Secret Service interviewed Ferry on the night of 11/25/63, and this was I'm sorry, it says subsequent to our interview with Ferry on the night of 11/25/63, he was interviewed by FBI agents at the 1st District Police Station. So, what does subsequent mean, Joe? Does that mean before or after?
After.
Before means after. Okay, so after our interview with Ferry, he was interviewed by the FBI. So the Secret Service actually interviewed David Ferry first on 11/25/63.
And that was he was obviously in Texas that weekend. I think he got back Sunday night, so he's getting interviewed the next day, right?
Yes. Now this is all. Remember, this is a Secret Service document. So they say on 11/26/63, it was learned that the FBI agents had talked with Jack S. Martin. That here's where it gets funny. Who admitted that he had been the informant with regard to David William Ferry. That Martin had admitted to the FBI that the information which he had furnished Assistant DA Attorney Coleman was, get this, Joe, quote, just a figment of his imagination. Now, where have we heard this before?
Oh man, of course, the lovely character who ends our show every night, and that is the infamous Dean Andrews.
I thought I was going to have to bail you out there for a second. I'm glad it came to you.
No, Ruby like jumped off something. Whatever. Yes, Dean Andrews, of course.
Yeah. So Martin admitted that the information he had furnished to Assistant District Attorney Aaron Coleman was a figment of his imagination, and that he had made up the story after reading the newspapers and watching television. That he remembered that Coleman, who was a former newspaper reporter, had written an article or story about Ferry a couple years ago, and that he had pieced the whole thing together in his mind, Joe, and had given it to Coleman as facts. This sounds just like the Dean Andrews story.
Yep, exactly.
But this is the first time that I've ever read or heard that Jack Martin admitted to making up anything.
Yeah, or giving an excuse that I don't know if it was the Dean Andrew excuse because he wasn't like in the hospital, right? But he was incoherent a lot of the time. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
I love our peeps. Hey, Lee Henry Oswald is in the house. What's up, Roger?
Hey, Roger. How are you?
It's our music guy. His avatar matches our color scheme tonight, Joe. I like that. A little lilac purple haze all in my brain. I like it. So it goes on to say, on the night of 11/29, Special Agent in Charge Rice and reporting agent interviewed Jack S. Martin again at length in his small, shitty, rundown apartment. They didn't really say shitty, but I will. And I'll show you a picture, Joe, of Jack Martin's apartment.
Really?
Check this out. Yeah, he lived at 1311 North Pryor Street in New Orleans. And it is still there today. Here you go. Check this out. So this is Jack Martin's little apartment. His apartment was here on the side of the house, not on the front. It was this door with the overhang right here.
That's
where he lived with his wife and child.
Isn't that ironic when you think about Lafayette and Camp Street?
Just wait. Just wait. I've got more goodies to show you later. It says that he shared a small rundown apartment located at 1311 North Pryor Street, which he shares with his wife and 6-year-old son. Excuse me. Martin, who has every appearance of being an alcoholic, admitted during the interview that he suffers from telephonitis when drinking, and that it was during one of his drinking sprees that he telephoned Assistant DA Herman Coleman and told him this fantastic story about David Ferry being involved with Lee Harvey Oswald. He said he had heard on television that Oswald had at one time been active in the Civil Air Patrol and had later heard that Ferry had been his squadron commander. Martin stated that Ferry was well known to him, that he recalled having seen rifles in Ferry's house, and he also recalled that Coleman had written an article on Ferry and that Ferry had been a Marine and had been with the Civil Air Patrol. Martin stated that after turning all of these thoughts over in his mind, he had telephoned Herman Coleman and told his story as though it was based on facts rather than just his imagination. In view of the above, this phase of the investigation involving William David Ferry will be considered closed. Now, what's interesting here, Joe, is it sounds to me like David Ferry threatened to probably kill Jack Martin for diming him out to the feds, and that Jack Martin just made up the fact that he made up the story out of thin air because of one very important fact, that is known about Jack Martin. We know for a fact that he told the FBI that he had seen a picture in David Ferry's apartment of Lee Harvey Oswald in the Civil Air Patrol with David Ferry. And that picture was not seen by the public until the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, decades after.
So there's no way that Jack Martin could have known that unless he had actually seen that picture. Okay? So it sounds to me like Martin got to him and said, look, you better shut your goddamn mouth, or I'm going to pump you full of lead, buddy. So he made up this telephonitis, and for some reason, I decided to make up this story, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, and telephonitis is equivalent to like a drunk calling, drunk texting, right? I think we've all been right. Many of us have.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I said
back in my day, we had to actually call. We couldn't just text. You had to pick up the phone. You had to know their number. Call. Yeah, it's rough. It's very rough. So then, one document that I wanted to talk about last week that I didn't upload and I didn't have with me, and this will get us all caught up to this week, is a letter to Jim Garrison from Howard Weisberg on March 16th, 1968. And it's a good one. He says, while I was eating tonight, I was paged for a phone call at the restaurant from Jack Martin, who said he was in Texas. It strikes me as remarkable that he knew where I was and what I had been doing. He was precisely accurate because these things he went into are what I have been discussing. Either my room is being bugged or there have been some excellent guesses. I did discuss some, but not all of it, with Dean Andrews. And I did get some of the information from Patricia Hoffman, whoever the hell that is. I don't know. Jack began abruptly by talking about Mike Slatter. This man has interested me since April 30th when I learned of him from Horace Pena. Knowing that, Pena arranged for me to learn something about him on this trip. Moreover, it is possible to infer what Martin said, that he assumed I knew something about Slatter. Martin began by identifying Slatter as the son of a former British Air Marshal and a secret friend and former frontman for George Lincoln Rockwell, the head of the party, right?
Bad people.
Here he also said that Banister was close to Rockwell.
Yep.
And that Banister represented Rockwell. Martin said that Kent Courtney presumably had those of Banister's files that were not burned sent to Augusta, Georgia, to the publication known as the Thunderbolt.
Yep. And I think it was Mary Banister that said that she had sold some files to Kent Courtney. I think we went over that, right?
Yeah. He now says that Banister and Delphine Roberts were, quote, celebrating the assassination, and that when he asked them if this is what they were doing, Banister slugged him in Delphine's presence. He also said that just prior to his being hit, he said he'd been talking about Ferry to Banister. Now, all these things about which Martin could talk to me, I'm wondering why he mentioned only things I discussed with witnesses during the past few days. It was not until about 3 nights ago that I learned about Slatter's name. I discussed Banister's file with Dean Andrews last Saturday and briefly this afternoon. Now, Horace Pena did tell me that although something showed signs of it, I don't know what, I can't read that word, it's blacked out, showed signs of it when she was with me for dinner Wednesday. After they left, she was angry with him for arranging it. Now, what he's talking about here is Horace Pena arranged for Harold Weisberg to have dinner with Delphine Roberts. Okay? Yeah.
That is interesting.
After they left, she was angry with him for arranging it. She called me a brain picker and seemed pretty clearly to resent my having learned what I had from her. So apparently, he's smarter than the average bear, and he got her to talk when she didn't want to. She was pissed. He goes on to say, Joe, that Delphine now works at NASA at the Michaud plant. She had been Mike Slatter's girlfriend, whoever the hell Mike Slatter is, and also has been Horace Pena's girlfriend on and off.
What?
So she's getting passed around like a party joint. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And of course, Rob, we know a lot of the didn't Lee Harvey after Riley was hopeful he would possibly get hired by NASA, and a lot of people from Riley.
Yeah, a bunch of people that worked at Riley went to work there.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So he says this about Delphine. She is a local country girl in her 30s. I'd estimate blonde, at least on Wednesday night she was, with a vagrant right-hand lock that curls off to itself, about 5'8" in shoes that she had on. She is radical right, has been friendly with Banister, and still is with Badeau, whoever that is. She says he wrote... No, Badeau.
Okay.
She says he wrote a book after he went to Jefferson Parish. Horace now thinks, get this shit, Horace Pena now thinks that Delphine was with him the night of the Oswald drunk incident at his bar. That when she was there, she usually stayed up late with him, and that she saw this drunk account. If so, she made no reference to it the night we dined together. She then seemed pleasant. After dinner, we adjourned to my room for further discussion. So Weisberg even got Delphine Roberts up to his bedroom or his hotel room after dinner.
This is like a Hugh Ainsworth Marina type of thing.
Then, too, she showed no resentment at being interviewed. So that's crazy, bro. Crazy.
That's
real
nuts.
quick.
So
Yeah.
Horace Pena allegedly had a relationship with Delphine.
He was banging her off and on. He says now that Delphine was there the night of the alleged Oswald drunk incident at his bar. Okay.
Yeah.
So after all this talk about the NASA, Michaud incident, right? I went looking a little bit about what is this place, right? I've heard about it, don't know what it is. I know it's NASA related. So here's the deal with Michaud.
Okay.
The facility was originally constructed in 1940. Okay, we know NASA wasn't around back then. Okay, but it was originally constructed in 1940 at the village of Michaud, Louisiana, by the Higgins Tucker Division of Higgins Industries under the direction of Andrew Jackson Higgins. Construction was done on behalf of the United States government for the war production during World War II of plywood and C-76 cargo planes and the Higgins boat landing craft. The project cost $180 million in 1940.
Yeah, I think
that's
Rob,
a lot of money.
Oh yeah, that's billion.
2.8 billion now.
Yeah. And I think the landing crafts at Normandy were the Higgins boats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
So it says production of the C-76 never commenced and instead produced 2 Curtiss C-46 Commando planes in 1943, and the remaining order was canceled in 1944. So for the first 4 years, after spending $180 million to open this plant, they never got their C-76 production off the ground and only produced 2 planes. What a giant waste of money, right?
Yeah.
So the facility was referred to as the National Guard Field in 1949. So within the span of a decade and all this money poured into it, it fizzled out and farted till finally they're not even really using it anymore for anything. The war is over. Now it's a National Guard Field by 1949. And it became totally inactive by 1952. During the Korean War, it was enlisted to make engines for the Sherman and Patton tanks and boasted a 5,500-foot paved runway. It came under the management of NASA in 1961 and was used for the construction of the SIC first stage of the Saturn V rockets and the SIB first stage of the Saturn IB rockets built by Chrysler Corporation. It is the home to the first stage of the last construction Saturn V SA-15 built by the Boeing Company. Okay. So check out this, Joe. Hold on.
All right.
You know, we're talking like the ass end of these big ass rockets, right?
Right.
You know, this is like the fuel part of them, you know, that gets them off the ground. This is what the inside of Michaud looks like. Now, for the big picture view, well, not big picture, but here's what it kind of looks like. It's kind of right on a port, a little inland port there. The water where it has barges where they can ship off, you know, I guess pieces and parts around the Horn to either Texas or Florida. So it's kind of in a good spot for NASA, and you can kind of see the facility back there. Here's a better drone shot of the facility and how actually big it is. It's pretty huge. Now, of course, if you remember some years ago during Hurricane Katrina, okay, New Orleans was hit very hard by Hurricane Katrina, but luckily for the government-funded Michaud NASA plant, okay, that is situated right on the waterfront, okay, it is the only thing that is still above water and not flooded and green and grassy, with their little encampment there. Totally everything else is underwater that you see, except for the Michaud production facility, which is this green, you know, to the right of the picture. Everything else is actually underwater in this picture.
Wow. So did they pick the high ground, or did they?
I don't know, Joe. It's a rabbit hole I did not go down, but you know, insert conspiracy theory here is all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I'm all about it, man. I'm all about it. Yeah.
But yeah, they employed thousands of people. They built all these rockets. And then they started building, of course, fuel tanks for the space shuttles and all that jazz. Portions of, check this out. NASA has an agreement in place to rent out a portion of the facility to Big Easy Studios, Joe, a New Orleans film studio. This deal has been criticized by competing studios as violating NASA's rule that any deal with an outside entity must serve the agency's mission and must not compete with the private sector. NASA officials defend the agreement, stating that this helps offset the cost of unused space at the facility. Some of the movies that have been filmed here, or partially filmed here, are the Harrison Ford movie Ender's Game, the Channing Tatum movie, G.I. Joe Retaliation, and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes were actually filmed at the NASA show facility.
Interesting.
Pretty cray-cray, right?
Yeah.
But that is just a little bit of a cleanup from last week. So I apologize for that. And we're going to get into a little bit more about another New Orleans figure. Joseph, take it away, my friend. Let's learn a little bit more about Mr. Carlos Quiroga, who actually I have a couple pictures of here real quick. So let's show the people who we're talking about here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is Carlos Quiroga on the right, and along with his beautiful wife, Maria Shiro.
Yeah. She's
daughter
a dime.
Of she and of course, as soon as Joe found out she's 100% Italian from Sicily, we're done here. So you have a full-blooded Cuban and a full-blooded Italian having a baby.
Yeah.
You know that they're going to be firecrackers. He had 3 daughters now. This is him and his wife again. This is him with his 3 daughters. Good-looking family, good-looking guy, Carlos Quiroga. And here he is with his beautiful bride, still at the age of 80, celebrating their probably 50th or 60th wedding anniversary, right? Now, folks, I did find this for Joe. Carlos Quiroga did pass away in 2019, 5 years ago. He was at the age of 83, and this is him. It says right there, he preceded in death by his parents, survived by his loving wife of 59 years, Maria Shiro Quiroga. So this is definitely him, folks. Mm-hmm. So he lived a nice, long life. So, Joe, let's find out a little bit more about Mr. Carlos Quiroga.
Quiroga.
Tongue roll like that. Quiroga.
Quiroga. Carlos Quiroga. It's funny. My girlfriend asked me, she's like, "What's your topic today?" And I said, "Carlos Quiroga." And she was like, "What? She had no idea.
Tune in, find out, you know?
Yeah, she's probably watching here. I'll probably get a text about it later.
Hey.
Yeah, let me bring this up here. But before we do, Rob, the schedule for Lancer has come out. Did you know that?
I did not. I do know the title for the Lancer presentations apparently came out. Oh, folks, real quick, Joe, before we get into this, I gotta tell the story.
Yeah. That's funny.
So,
embarrassing.
Doug of the Lone Gunman podcast, everybody knows and loves Doug.
Wait, of the Lone Gunman?
Or the Dallas Action, sorry, in Queen Kids. He says, "Hey, man,
Douglas Craig.
Want a joke on Joe?" I said, "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" He's like, "Hey, man, wait till you get home from work today and just say, hey, I just got home and I saw that they posted everybody's topics for Lancer, what everybody's going to be talking about, and just say something like, really, dude, like you couldn't come up with a better name, and just leave it kind of vague." And then Joe took the bait, and he's like, "Well, what did it say?" I said, "Doug Campbell and Joe Borelli present what we found on the internet." I was like, "Really? That you couldn't come up with a better title than that?" And he was like, "Where is it?" I said, "Lancer posted it." And he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I said, "No, dude, go look." And he's like, "I can't find it. I can't fucking find it. I can't believe it." And in the meantime, me and Doug are dying, and yeah, it went on for a couple hours before he finally realized we were pulling a fast one on him. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, Doug and I are like finalizing the name for our presentation, and Kenneth and Gabby Zediker asked us for the presentation name, and Doug said as a joke to me, the title should just be Things We Found on the Internet. And then when you sent that to me, I was like, what? That was a joke. He wasn't supposed to tell them that. Like, what the fuck? Like I was like, you completely got me. I was it was a good joke. And then I messaged Doug and I'm like, yo, brah, what's up? You told them that was the name of our presentation. And then I figured it out. And yes, I am
It's funny.
It's hilarious. And I am the gullible one, I think. And but credit to the Zedekers, because we were initially going to present on Sunday, and I'm flying in Thursday night. The 22nd is on a Friday, and I didn't want to have to check out of the hotel and worry about presenting and whatever else. So they moved us to Saturday, and
we'll pop the schedule back up there.
Yeah, I'm going to right now. So Friday on the 22nd, Mike Swanson, friend of the show, Wall Street.
Big Mike.
Yeah, is going to lead it off. Target Cuba or Vietnam. Then you have Sarah Jordan Heinz, Brian Edwards, Casey Quinlan, and then a dinner and special presentation, which I don't know what that is, but that will be interesting. And Rob, we have to figure out what we're going to do, because as you know, we go live Friday nights. Friday, the conference is the 22nd. Might not be at 7 p.m. We're in discussions, but maybe we'll have some hotel after party.
We will go live.
Yeah,
at some point Friday evening.
Yes.
And Joe may or may not be drunk.
Yes. Yeah, you never know. But we will have maybe a guest or two in the hotel sessions type of thing. But on Saturday, it's stacked, Rob. Dick Russell is kicking it off. Will O'Halloran.
Dirty Dick Russell.
Yes, sir. Jacob Harberger.
And then Big Willie O'Halloran.
Yeah. And then Bob Nelson at noon. And then Paul Blow, Jeffrey Meek, David Boylan at 1 p.m. Then at 2:30, Carmine Savastano, friend of the show, of course, will be virtually presenting. 3 p.m., Gail Nix Jackson. And 4 p.m., the Scafuza crew, Joe Borelli and Doug Campbell.
Topic, things we found on the internet.
Yep, TBA. Yep. Pre-headliner to Bill Simpich, and then the banquet dinner at 7 p.m. So I know Doug and I are really excited about that. And I mean, can it get any better than between Gail Nix Jackson and Bill Simpich, Rob? It's pretty good.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a threesome. Yeah, if there was another chick in there, maybe.
if you were in there, maybe.
Sure. What?
And Sunday is packed as well. Gary Fannin, Daniel Sheehan, Andy Keel, lunch break, Fred Litwin, friend of the show, Alex Harris. Then presentation by Larry Hancock and David Boylan, Matt DeWitt at 4 p.m., Brett Holland, Robert Groden, Janet Groden, and Paul Blow to close it out. So
that is stacked and packed, Jack. Remember, if you cannot make it there in person, you can always purchase a virtual ticket. And if you do, follow the link in the description. Use our code Gunman10. Save yourself 10% off of any ticket package, whether you go there or you don't. Whether you go there and you eat dinner or you don't, or whether it's just a virtual ticket, you can save yourself a good chunk of change. 10% off of a couple $100 is nothing to sneeze at. So take advantage. Use code Gunman10.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention, there's a couple other not cool conferences going on at Dallas at that time. Of course, the Judith Very Baker conference, and one.
Did you hear about that real quick? I got an email, Joe. Since you bring it up,
of course,
you got to put this out there because I was like, what the F is going on here? I'm on so many of these JFK email lists, Yeah. I get shit from all around the world, apparently. So somehow I'm on, let's see. I mean, I know why I am. We went to his conference 10 years ago. Excuse me. Where is it? I don't think, well, maybe I deleted it. Let me look at my trash can. I don't think I would have, because I wanted to save it, because I couldn't believe it. Damn it. Search in mail from, here it is. Huh. Okay. Of course, the Cuckoo Conference, as it is affectionately known, get this. One of the highlights of their conference, Joe, is going to be the testimony and cross-examination of Judith Very Baker under oath, hand on the Bible, regarding her relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald. And that's not all, folks. A noted trial lawyer named Steve Kennedy will conduct an official deposition of Judith Very Baker for the record, with JFK historian presenter Dory Wiley providing the introduction. This is just one of the many outstanding presentations at this event. You can find all information concerning registration and hotel accommodations at our blah, 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 blah. I read that and I was like, you have got to be.
Yeah, because it's obviously, it could be under oath, right? But it's not actually under oath, right? Unless you're testifying, grand jury, a trial, like.
It's all official, Joe. It's all official.
It's
hand on the Bible shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's for real. By a lawyer, a real life deposition.
Named Kennedy.
Hand on the Bible, heart to God.
Yeah, and a lawyer named Kennedy too. So you got to.
Pardon me as my eyes roll to the back of my skull,
right,
and then back around to my eyeball sockets again.
It's silly and it's nonsense, and I think most of our listeners know that. So
silly.
Yeah. So we implore you to support the best conference, because a lot of the presenters there,
that's a good idea, Bungled. Hook that bitch up to a polygraph machine. But the problem with that, though, Bungled,
she probably believes
she has been telling this lie for so many years.
Yeah.
She probably believes every single delusional word of it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
She is literally cuckoo. She comes out the clock every hour on the hour. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I do think you're right. She probably believes it at this point. So she might pass like a few questions, and then everyone will be like, oh, she's telling the truth. But like, no.
Doug Campbell will be doing the cross-examination of Judith Very Baker.
Well, Rob, let me say
if
this.
only.
So there are 3 conferences, right? And all of them are going to be in Dealey Plaza on the 22nd, which is Friday. So you're going to have.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. So when I was there in 2019, same thing. You had the Cuckoo Conference going on, and then Lancer and Kappa were doing a conference together. So all three were in Dealey Plaza at the same time in 2019. And you had Judith Baker and Beverly Oliver
And
shucking
John
and jiving on the grassy knoll.
D'Angelo is the writer behind.
was he there?
Yeah, he was there. Wet pants and Velcro shoes and all, bud. In his defense, he did sleep through a few presentations. But again, yeah, you can't make this stuff up. But again, all three were there. They're putting on a show. Beverly's singing. Judy's, giving this big speech, and it was just, and everybody's like, what the fuck is going on here? Basically. It was a shit show.
Yeah, it's exactly what it's going to be. I feel like this year.
People yelling, "Shut up, liar!" I mean, it was just off the hook, bro.
Wow.
People, shut up! No, you shut up. Oh yeah.
We might have to live stream that one, Rob. But
this is Joe Borelli live from the grassy knoll
on my scooter. And hello, Mr. Douglas.
DC is in the house.
DC is.
Yeah, we're not lying, Doug. I'm telling you, you're going to have the Cuckoo Conference. You're going to have the Old Fart Conference, which is Kappa, and then you're going to have Lancer, which is actually having a lot of the younger generation of researchers there. Now there will be a couple elderly folks there, but not. The majority of it is new faces. They even are going out on a limb this year and allowing a known lone nutter to present. Okay, Fred Litwin, who, just to piss everybody off, we're going to have on the show here in a couple weeks.
Wow.
So,
wow.
I think it only fair, because look, if it doesn't matter where it comes from, if somebody can set the record straight about something that has been canon for 50 or 60 years, and something comes along where somebody can debunk something that has been held as close. For example, in his new book, and he's be presenting about this in Dallas as well, he says he can seemingly debunk the Rose Cheramy story. So that would be interesting. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. I don't know. I have not read his book yet. I have not heard what he has to say about it at all. Excuse me. But if he found something that debunks the Rose Cheramy story, then we need to know about it.
Yeah.
And kudos to Lancer for having him there. And while there, he is going to be, a piece of pepper in a salt shaker. So be nice to Fred. Fred's a nice guy. Don't go at him sideways. He's very reasonable to talk to, unless you're just stupid. Okay? Both sides have crazy nutbags on them. The lone nutters have them. The conspiracy side has them.
Very true.
You can go to a whole conference of kooky ass shit if you want to. You know what I'm saying? People that make conspiracy theorists look bad. Right over there. Yeah. Or you can come together where we present things in a nice manner with respectable people, and let the chips lie where they may. Maybe Fred got some stuff right. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I haven't heard it yet. But hopefully he will join us here on the show before Lancer here in a couple of weeks. I want a chance to read his book first before I have him on. He has reached out to me. I have not answered him yet because I just got his book in the mail the other day, but I have not read it yet. So, but he definitely wants to come on the show, and we will have him on the show. And it is what it is. So,
yeah. And Rob,
stay tuned for that.
That's Rob just dropped that on me too. And I never got the idea of just because someone has a different opinion or take on things that they should be boycotted or completely vilified. Like, and I've never spoken with Fred Lewin. I listened to the episode you had with him, but like, I think the book is debunking a lot of Garrison things. Maybe he's right on some of them. Maybe he's wrong on some of them. But it gives us better clarity if you can tie up one or two things, whatever. I don't know.
It's like our buddy Will says. There's another thing he does. He goes in on Richard Case Nagel, which I've even gone in on too before. Garrison's Mr. X. Is Nagel full of shit? Probably. There's no evidence whatsoever to back up any of his claims.
Yeah.
You know, he was injured. Is what happened in the bank weird? Yeah. Does it mean anything?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But apparently, you know, Lewin says he can debunk it. So, you know, we're going to have him on and see what he has to say.
Yeah.
That's what we can do is have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And then you can choose from there whether you want to agree or not. You know, but
yeah. And I never was into
you're man enough to say, okay, let him on. Let's have a conversation about it. See what he has to say.
Yeah.
You know, just because he is a lone nutter does not mean I'm automatically going to be like, no, dude, you can't come on the show. I don't want to hear what you have to say, blah, blah, blah.
No.
But there are people like that.
Right.
Who won't have somebody like Fred Litwin on the show because they're scared. Scared of what? You know? Scared of what? A disagreement? Having a conversation with, look, we're all human beings, okay? Obviously, Fred cares a lot about the Garrison investigation and the wrongs done against Clay Shaw and the homosexual community and all of that jazz, and he has every right to feel that way. And some of it is very, very valid, for sure. So it's important to have people like that on the show, to have a conversation. You know, he does research. He does go by the documents. So we're going to have him on and have a conversation. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I never got the whole, like, if you're a lone nutter, like, I'm going to completely tune you out type of thing. I never got it. Maybe because, like, I never, like got involved in the message boards, like the fights on them. And I don't know. It's not me. Like, I'm happy to listen to anyone's opinion as long as they're relatively informed, you know what I mean? But some people that
just like I'm not scared to rock a pink vape. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm man enough to rock a pink vape.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't question me.
Pink berry ice.
Clay Bertrand. Sorry.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Well, you have
Stay
to
tuned for the next quick hits for more of that. Because your boy is a clairvoyant. That's all I'm going to say. Just that's a little preview for next quick hits. Clay Bertrand. Go ahead, Jim.
All right. Well, all right. Let's get into Carlos Quiroga for a little while. And he is an interesting figure in New Orleans, Mr. Gasson, who admittedly met Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a Cuban exile, an anti-Castro Cuban, residing in New Orleans. And following Oswald's arrest on August 9th, 1963, Quiroga on August 16th contacted Oswald, went over to his apartment on Magazine Street at the behest of Carlos Bringle in an effort to penetrate Oswald's Fair Play for Cuba Committee organization. So,
I thought you were going to say to penetrate Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, this gets more interesting.
I can't debunk that per se. But
just for future reference, watch out for the next quick hits because we might be talking about that as well. Clay Bertrand. Go ahead, Joe.
All right. So a lot of people have written about Carlos Quiroga, and among the best researchers in the community, from the 12-part essay, The 12 Who Built the Oswald Legend by Bill Simpich. He gave a little time.
Part of you and Doug's threesome.
Yeah. So like most of us know, on August 9th, 1963, there was a fracas in New Orleans where Bringle and a couple other Cuban exiles and Lee Harvey Oswald were arrested for, I think it was disturbing the peace. And on August 10th, I just want to go over the timeline real quickly. That is when Special Agent John Quigley reported that Oswald was desirous of seeking an FBI agent and supplying him information with regards to his activities with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. On August 16th, and I believe we have footage of this, Rob. This was the footage of Oswald passing out leaflets with a couple other young people, and that was, I believe, after.
Well, we don't have footage, but there is footage because Joe didn't give me any footage.
I think we showed it at some point recently in the past month or two. Couple.
That's debatable.
It's
just messing.
Yeah.
Hell comes to play. What's up, Lee? Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. $10 for Joe copping a buzz before the conference. I'm sure that will actually happen, Lee. Money well invested, sir.
Copping a buzz before the conference. I respect that, Lee. Thank you.
You can have a nice mixed drink for $10, my friend.
And so,
hotel bar.
Yeah, we'll see. So on August 16th, Oswald went out to leaflet again with Banister's 544 Camp Street address stamped on his Fair Play for Cuba leaflets. He had some interesting company at the site. The maintenance supervisor at the Trade Mart, Mr. Bridges, was on the scene. The owner of the Trade Mart, Clay Shaw, had been a CIA source for many years. DRE military leader Isidro Borja was watching, and WDSU TV filmed the 8/16.
Hang on, Joe. Did you glaze over on the August 9th section that FBI informant Horace Pena was watching Oswald, and that CIA agent William Gaudette was watching Oswald as well from his office?
I think I did, sir. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate that. Horace Pena comes up again.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, very interesting there. Thank you, Rob. And so later on August 16th, Cuban exiles, Carlos Quiroga, FBI informant number T5, visited Oswald with the ostensible purpose of trying to join the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. The story is that Quiroga was asked by Bringle to penetrate Oswald's group. Oswald's landlady said that she saw Quiroga was delivering a 5-inch stack of Fair Play for Cuba Committee flyers to Oswald, and let it be known that she didn't want any of those flyers around her property. Quiroga said that Oswald.
So who was this?
This was Oswald's landlady and Magazine Street.
So she said Carlos Quiroga delivered Fair Play for Cuba Committee flyers, a 5-inch stack, to Oswald.
Correct, and that's a detailed description of.
Yeah.
It
doesn't line up with Quiroga's story that he's trying to be an undercover informant for the DA or the New Orleans police or the FBI by penetrating Oswald's Fair Play for Cuba Committee group. That sounds to me like he's part of helping Oswald in his little Fair Play for Cuba ruse.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. And Quiroga said that Oswald spent little time with him, but told him to go away. It's hard to say if they were adversaries or actually working in concert. So I think, Carlos Quiroga, friends with Bringle, involved with the CRC. he was actually let go of being an FBI informant because they had not liked his, quote, detective mindset, right? Like he was going around kind of playing double agent, and they didn't like that. So he was up to something, and hold on, let me get this here. So this is a little snippet from Tipping Point by Larry Hancock about Carlos Quiroga. As noted above, Lee Harvey Oswald was already engaged with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee as a pro-Castro supporter when he made his first contact with the Cuban community in New Orleans, a contact with its most active anti-Castro element. The much discussed contact began with an offer to buy bonds, which the DRE had been selling. Oswald's offer of financial support for the anti-Castro effort was immediately rejected, and that's when he was told they would no longer be sold, and that's when he offered his service as a military trainer.
Yeah. Thanks, Philip Garachi the third. Continue, sir.
Thank you, Phil. Oswald's landlady at the time later interviewed and described seeing Quiroga visit Oswald carrying what appeared to be a stack of leaflets, very possibly Fair Play for Cuba leaflets. Oswald can be shown to have requested materials from the Fair Play for Cuba committee itself. However, an approach by Quiroga with FPCC materials in hand would have certainly been consistent with the visit being a test of Oswald's true affiliations. So this is August 16th. It's a week after the fracas, right? 6 days after they had...
Right around the time he's going on the radio and TV interviews, right?
Yeah, he went on the day after.
Yeah.
So Quiroga's kind of going to Oswald, feeling him out, and seeing what really is he up to. Is he a communist publicly and like trying to draw out other communists, or is he actually pro-Castro and allegedly Bringle?
Or is he trying to work with Oswald, bringing him leaflets to hand out?
Yeah,
that's a simple explanation. I mean, you're trying to get, we're trying to go too deep here, making speculations when, Occam's razor. Hey, if Quiroga's bringing Oswald flyers to hand out, what's that tell you? Then he's either part of the effort to set up Oswald for this, and he was also very, very chummy with Sergio Arcacha Smith, who's his organization was housed at 544 Camp Street, which showed up on the flyers, which is odd. So maybe it wasn't Oswald that put that address on there. Maybe he got it from Quiroga in his stack of flyers.
Yeah, it's very possible. It's just interesting. It's a week after the whole fracas, and the exiles are kind of testing Oswald out, right?
Yeah, and this is after swarming him at the courtroom for his bail hearing.
Yeah. And we showed that.
That included Quiroga, Bringle. Who else was it that was there?
Emilio Rodriguez, I believe, or Ernesto or Emilio Rodriguez. One of the.
I think it was Emilio.
I think it was Emilio. Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting.
So what the hell is going on here? Well, this I found in the Malcolm Blunt archives, and Quiroga is a Cuban refugee and a militant anti-Castro partisan. He appears to have known Guy Banister and told a Washington Star staff writer that Ferry had been a frequent visitor at Banister's offices. He is confidential informant number T5, who who gave the information.
NOT5, yeah, New Orleans.
Oh yeah. I thought it was a number. Reading it quickly. Yep.
T1 was Bringle.
Yep. Good. Thank you. He had gone to Oswald's home on Magazine Street on a pretext of interest in the Fair Play for Cuba Committee and obtained some literature after a lengthy discussion with Oswald. He turned the literature over to Carlos Bringle, who was also carefully following Oswald's activities. Quiroga offered his services to the New Orleans District Attorney staff as a kind of undercover agent in the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, but was rejected.
Yep.
And we just mentioned him, Rob, Ernesto Rodriguez, who we did a segment on recently. Oswald went to him. He was running the language school.
Yep.
Told interviewing Secret Service agents on December 1st, 1963, that
what I just said.
I'm sorry?
No, continue. I just said this. But this backs up what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. That Quiroga had been closely associated with Sergio Cacho Smith in the CRC before Smith left the group. Quiroga was served with a subpoena on May 8th and appeared before the New Orleans grand jury. And we will get to that in a second, Rob. His grand jury testimony is worth its weight in laughs.
Yeah, so is his polygraph examination.
Yeah. Let's just get to it now. So he did not want to talk to the Garrison grand jury at all.
Not many people did.
True. And you'll see why now. He says he has been threatened by a man in the district attorney's office with perjury if he testified. So he's saying someone in Garrison's office threatened him with perjury if he testified. Mm-hmm. Therefore, he does not want to incriminate himself and will stand on his constitutional rights. This is Alcock, I believe. Well, let me ask you this, Carlos. Are you saying that beyond your name and address, you will not testify? If I would testify, I would be threatened by a man in the DA's office with perjury. I do not want to testify. I stand on my rights. Mr. Alcock, I would like to get from you today what sort of threat you are talking about. He goes, I can't testify here because I've been threatened. He just repeats it, right? Who threatened you? I stand on my rights. So it's an interesting defense, right? I'm not sure if he was threatened, but interesting strategy here. And do you think you'd be incriminating yourself if you name the man who threatened you in the district attorney's office? Because they're taking this pretty seriously in the grand jury, right? He's saying this.
Well, yeah.
Mr. Garrison chimes in. Now, let me tell you this. Regardless of what any member of my staff may have told you, I am now telling you I'm the DA, and you will not be charged with perjury if you tell the truth. We only charge people with perjury when they lie under oath. Now, I have told you that as DA, and you can disregard the so-called threat you are talking about. Now, will you testify and answer our questions? I, again, don't want to incriminate myself. So you can imagine how frustrated
But again, if he's doing this stuff with Oswald, he has every right to be scared to death to testify, to incriminate himself. He doesn't want to talk to Garrison for a good reason.
Yeah.
Especially if they know that he's lying because, well, we'll get to it.
Yeah. And Mr. Garrison, there's only one problem, Carlos. You told us these things, but when you were asked the same questions in front of the lie detector test, the lie detector indicated you were not telling the truth in regard to all these points. Of course, we want the truth, not what you told them. Quiroga,
ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. Why don't you tell them the rest of the story about the lie detector test? Again, fascinating response in the grand jury. I will be glad to, Mr. Garrison. In fact, I will ask you all the questions I asked you during the polygraph. Well, let's stick to the point. Let's not start on that long story. Anyway, Mr. Ricardo Davis is lying. is lying. Okay. David Lewis told us that he saw you with Lee Harvey Oswald on at least 4 occasions. In fact, he said that he had never seen Lee Harvey Oswald without your being with him. Now we have, now we gave him the lie detector test on that question, and he passed it. And when we gave you, Carlos Quiroga, the lie detector test on your statement that you only saw Oswald once, you failed it. And Quiroga's response, again, gentlemen, I have come here with good intentions. I am telling you the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Interesting. And I'm skipping along because it's actually 70 pages long.
Yeah, it's a long one.
It's really long. Have you ever been in 544 Camp Street? In early 61 and early 62, yes, I was. Were you a member of an organization which had offices there? Which offices you mean? Quiroga says. Garrison, the Cuban Democratic Revolutionary Front. Were you associated with them? And he goes, huh. And Garrison asks him again, were you associated with any organization that had offices at 544 Camp Street? Yes, Quiroga says. It closed down in 62. Mr. Ravel closed the office. Did you ever see Sergio Cacha Smith there? Yes. Did you ever see David Ferry there in that office in 61? Yes. Quiroga, I think so. So then they got on to the polygraph. And Quiroga's like, I don't want to answer these questions. I answered them already in the polygraph. Like, go back to that. Like, he's really like annoying them. And but you took the polygraph and you passed most of the questions. Now I want to talk about some of the questions you failed. We can go into my instance of your taking the test, and I did insist that, but we can go into that later. But let's go into the questions you failed. You passed many of them, and you don't seem to have been affected by your nervous condition then. Knowing Oswald, knowing that he was not actually a communist, knowing that the Fair Play for Cuba was a cover, in those areas, the lie detector test showed that you were lying. That is what we want to go into today, instead of stalling and going in other directions. And Quiroga says the same thing he's been saying for a long time now. I don't want to incriminate myself. I stand on my rights of the Fifth Amendment. Mr. Garrison, Mr. Quiroga, among the questions you failed on the lie detector test was the question, do you have any firsthand knowledge of the conspiracy to assassinate President Kennedy? And you answered no, and the lie detector test indicated that there was deception on your part. What do you have to say about that? And this is interesting, Rob, because a few times a juror in the grand jury is asking a question and chiming in. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And if you don't want publicity, this is your place to say it. We want to help protect your family. We know there's reluctance is from getting this out and your parents suffering. We want to help you. And Carlos Quiroga's father was in a Cuban prison at the time. So this is the excuse he gave. He doesn't want to talk because if he did, Castro would kill his father. And Quiroga says this, the meeting I had with Lee Harvey Oswald in 63, I gave full information to the FBI and the Secret Service, and I requested them not to make it public at the time. And again, my father was in prison and could be shot at any time, and they still made it public. They did not give it to the public because, for example, I myself and who have still in my possession a slip to join that organization and a crime against Cuba, blah, blah, blah. So he's allegedly concerned that he doesn't want his name to get out because his dad is still in a Cuban prison and that he might get shot if he talked. So don't think that's the reason, but
Okay.
I mean, it's a decent cover, right?
Yeah. And again, Carlos Quiroga seemed to have go on and live a nice long life with his family and extended family, his grandkids and everything. And if you want to know more about him, just like I said, look up his obituary. And at this funeral home website, they have, how sometimes when people pass away, they'll have like a photo thing going on in the background or a video or whatever. And there's like 150 pictures of this guy's life. I mean, he looked like a real character, a fun-loving guy, very involved with his family. And he loved to dress up for Halloween, apparently. And did a lot of traveling, all around the world, back to Italy and Egypt and all kinds of cool stuff. So did this guy know something? I think he did. I think he was a little bit more than what he might have been saying,
Yeah. Only
but it's certainly interesting.
Yeah. And somehow, because I know we got a Richard Case Nagel comment earlier, according to Nagel, a Bringle colleague who played a role in setting Oswald up as a patsy was none other than Carlos Quiroga. And when Garrison polygraphed Quiroga and other research proved Quiroga knew Banister and Sergio Cacho Smith had met Oswald more than once and supplied Oswald with fair play for Cuba literature on the orders of Bringle. And goes on to say Quiroga was shown to be lying by the polygraph when he claimed to met Oswald only once. And Joan Mellon has a interesting couple paragraphs about him too, but I don't want to take up all the time. But very interesting that this character who met Oswald only once, but allegedly gave him leaflets and involved with Bringle, obviously a big anti-Castro exile. A lot more going on here, Rob, than I think is on the surface.
Just to wrap up a little bit about him, say hello to his father-in-law, Victor Shiro, mayor of New Orleans, folks, from 1961 until 1970. So his father-in-law was the mayor of New Orleans during all this time, during the assassination, during the Garrison investigation. His father-in-law, Victor Shiro, is the mayor. Okay? The mayor.
Maybe that's why
this is back when mayors actually had pull and power.
Yeah, that's crazy. Maybe that's why he had such confidence in rejecting and being so standoffish with the Garrison investigation, right?
Yeah.
Like, my father-in-law's the mayor. Like, what are you going to do to me?
Yeah. Victor Hugo Shiro. His daughter Maria is who Carlos Quiroga married. Now, Victor Shiro was born in Chicago, Illinois, and he was the son of Andrew Edward and Mary Pizzotti Shiro, immigrants of Italian, specifically Sicilian origins, Joe.
Yeah.
Mafia connections?
Yeah.
Anyone?
It's the home of La Cosa Nostra, that's for sure.
And the Marcellos. Shiro spent his young adulthood in Honduras and California, where he worked as a movie extra. Joe, good-looking guy like that. And he co-managed a Nevada gold mine before returning to New Orleans. He worked briefly as an assistant cameraman for director Frank Capra. Having returned to New Orleans in 1928, Shiro became a radio announcer, and in 1932, Shiro married Mary Margaret Gibbs, better known as Sonny Shiro. Like I said, he became mayor in 1961. And a little bit about this guy. His motto was, if it's good for New Orleans, then I'm for it. Okay? But he was very personally, opposed to integration. This is another vehement segregationist who is the mayor of New Orleans. Okay? From 61 to 70. Okay? We're talking prime Leander Perez time, who was also another big money segregationist down there.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Shiro defeated, get this, Joe, the Republican candidate for mayor at the time, one Elliot Ross Buckley, cousin of newspaper columnist and magazine publisher William F. Buckley of New York City. And we know that William F. Buckley's brother Ross used to hang out at the bars with Kerry Thornley. Okay, back in like early 60s. But apparently he had a cousin, Elliot Ross Buckley, who was another newspaper columnist and magazine publisher, a cousin, of Ross. And Ross was William F. Buckley Jr.'s brother. This was their cousin, Elliot Ross Buckley. That's who he beat. Shiro only received 3% of the black vote in the runoff with Duplantier. That's before he defeated Elliot Ross Buckley. So this guy was such a segregationist, Joe. Apparently, let's see, let me find this. Because it's interesting. Let's see. Okay, here we go. One of Shiro's final acts in office was to reinstall the Battle of Liberty Place Monument, which honored a failed coup by the paramilitary White League of the sitting Republican governor William Pitt Kellogg, who supported voting rights for blacks. The inscription on the monument, which Shiro erected at the foot of Canal Street, celebrated the return of white supremacy in the South. Shiro had left the monument, which had been removed for construction, in a storage facility for the entirety of his 2 terms as mayor of New Orleans. And on his way out, he put it back. So at least he put it back.
That's crazy.
In 2001, Victor Shiro was posthumously inducted into the Louisiana Political Museum and Hall of Fame in Winfield, Louisiana. I guess, he was a very important segregationist mayor, Joe.
Yeah.
Down in New Orleans.
Wisconsin.
Down in New Orleans. All right, let me get VHS. That's Victor Hugo Shiro. VHS off of the screen. Sick bastard, Paula Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Next up, we're gonna.
What?
Yes, Joe.
Trey said one corner of the French Quarter used to be known as the Sicilian Corner. Interesting.
That's where all the Goombas hung out.
Right?
The Goombas and Scafoozes of New Orleans.
And
a very rough part of town.
Yep. And Trey said he had seen the monument. It has since been taken away.
Well, I hope so, Trey. Well, I don't know. It's very interesting about the monument. Anyway, let's get into a statement from David Lewis, December the 15th, 1966. From January of 61 to January 62, he worked as a private investigator for Guy Banister and Associates. In the late summer of 63, he was reporting to Louisiana State Employment Office at 601 Camp Street. He used to stop by several times Banister's office to seek side work. and on one occasion went to Mancuso's on the corner and saw Arcacha with Carlos Quiroga, who we just talked about, and was introduced by Carlos to Lee Harvey Oswald at Mancuso's, right beside Guy Banister's office. Have now determined through photographs that Lee Harvey was in fact Lee Harvey Oswald. He says that Lee Harvey didn't talk much. He seemed anxious to leave and appeared to be nervous. Carlos, Sergio, as in Arcacha Smith, and Oswald were involved in some business which dealt with Cuba. Oswald dressed in dark slacks, light blue, split shirt, whatever that means. I guess button up.
Yeah.
Short sleeves. And Carlos, whose last name I don't know, that's Quiroga, is a well-dressed man, black hair, black eyes, 5'11" to 6 feet, very good looking. But Arcacha appeared to be the boss. Saw Oswald 3 or 4 times in the neighborhood of Lafayette Camp, and went to Banister's office, and they shut the door to the inner office. There were Ferry, Arcacha, and Lee Harvey. Okay. And that was a statement made by him. Now, Lou Ivan interviewed David Lewis later on the day after he made his statement. And he says he told Lou Ivan, that he saw Oswald no more than 4 times, each time in the company of Carlos, which you brought up in that document. 4 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Carlos had closed door dealings with Banister. Arcacha, who appeared to be the boss, also dealt with Banister, nature of business unknown. Also knew Ferry, identifies pictures of Ferry, and also one of Oswald as a man he knew as Lee Harvey. Met Ferry in Banister's office. Once went with Jack Martin, Joe Newborough, and Louise Decker to Ferry's home in Metairie. I was just along for the ride. Trip had something to do with Eastern Airlines. Not sure if I ever saw Oswald with Ferry. That is one thing that is really bugging me because I knew both of them around the same time. Wait, David Ferry, Carlos, was that other man Oswald? Was it? There was another man there. There was another man there. It may have been, but I'm not sure because I remember this particular day. I came in, and as soon as I came into the office, I looked into Banister's office. Ferry, Banister at his desk, and this other guy back and to the left of Ferry was there. It may have been Oswald. Carlos was just sitting in another chair in the office. At Ferry's apartments once, who was there? 2 young men were at Ferry's house when we arrived. One kind of looked like Oswald, but he had sandy or blondish color hair. And the name Quiroga sounds familiar. I could identify him. Lewis later identified a picture of Carlos Quiroga as the man he knows as Carlos. So, there you have that, Joe.
Yeah.
And
some more corroboration there for sure.
Yeah. So this is a very short clip of David Lewis being interviewed. Now, this is a couple days before David Ferry is found dead. Okay, this is February 19th, 1967. Here is David Lewis.
Absolutely. The persons involved in this particular time in question, that Mr. Garrison is investigating. At this time, I did know certain people that would be capable of such a plot.
And have you told him of these things?
Definitely. I feel it's my duty to tell him, if nothing else.
Why has it been so long? It's been 3 years. Why hasn't this been brought out before?
That I do not know. I think it's something that should have been done by other people, including the people of the Warren Commission.
Have you offered your information to the FBI?
Definitely not. Then no one of the FBI has even approached me as yet.
So there you have that. He said, definitely not. Nobody from the FBI has talked to him. Now, I have another short clip where they talk to David Lewis. Now, this is one day after David Ferry is found dead. So this is 4 days later than his first interview. One day after Ferry is found dead. Take it away, David Lewis.
Earlier this week, Lewis, a father of 4, said he knew 4 or 5 men who were capable of being involved in the alleged plot to kill Kennedy. At his home today, Lewis told us he feels these men are still alive. In view of Ferry's death, Lewis was asked about his own safety.
Well, it did shake me up. I have to tell you, say that it adds more fear for myself, no, but for my family, yes. The possibility is there. I don't know if they wanted to get me, or they might get at me through my family. And this thing is something that really irritates me. I think I've been exposed quite a little too much. But it's out. They know what I look like. They know who I am. They know where I work. So I don't know.
But to most other questions, Lewis replied, "The district attorney doesn't want me to say any more. It may be 2 more days before the cause of Ferry's death yesterday is known for sure." Vern Rotman, NBC News, New Orleans.
Yeah. Now, does that seem like a guy who's full of crap? I mean, this is the guy, David Lewis, who used to hang around Jack Martin a lot. He was Jack Martin's like little buddy sidekick type. They started a private investigating firm after Banister went out of business and passed away. Then they moved to Texas together and started writing for a newspaper in Houston. And they were moving back and forth between New Orleans and Texas during this time of the Garrison investigation, on and off, staying with each other. So I don't know what was going on here. I mean, it just said the guy had 4 kids. I mean, he looks like a 19-year-old kid. This dude must have been cranking them out, like 13 or 14 years old. Now, David Lewis's wife, Anna, who you all might know, was the one living witness that Judith Vary Baker brought forth in the late 90s to justify her story. The problem with that is, in Anna Lewis's interview, she screws up a lot of details, including saying that she saw Judy with Lee in 1962, early 1962, while he was still in Russia, which is a problem. So among other things, you got to watch the interview. It's a trip. Deborah Conway, I think, did the interview from Lancer with Anna Lewis, and of course Judy's sitting right there, and Judy chimes in to correct Anna a lot during this interview. So how trustworthy is David Lewis running around with Jack Martin, Mr. It was just a figment of my imagination, and all of Jack Martin's craziness and all the different versions of stories that he told. So how accurate can we trust David Lewis's stuff? I don't know, but it's interesting. Okay. He puts Quiroga and Oswald together many, many times in and around Banister's office. So the reason I have the House Select Committee on Assassinations on the cover of this here very program from the beginning here at the bottom, Louis Stokes and all them guys, is because I came across a document where the HSCA kind of collaborated and collated everybody that they interviewed in New Orleans and came to a conclusion at the end, which I've never seen before. And this was put together by Betsy Palmer on May 30th, 1978. Their issue A, step 6. This is draft 1. From the list of employees obtained in steps 1 through 3 and the Banister records obtained in steps 4 and 5, select no more than 50 persons for interviews based upon the following criteria. A, the amount of time spent in the building. B, availability. C, employment at site between May and December of 63. D, the closeness of association to Banister, Ferry, or Arkasha. Okay. Part 1, persons selected to be interviewed. Investigators determined that there were only 14 people available for an interview who met the above listed criteria. The persons selected below and their pertinence to the issues are listed below. Okay. 1 was Louise Decker, who was a secretary in Banister's office from October 61 to January 62. She has identified a number of persons who frequented Banister's office, including David Ferry, Carlos Quiroga, Sergio Arkasha Smith, and the results of her interview have not been written up according to Daly. Carlos Quiroga. The acquaintance of Sergio Arkasha Smith, Guy Banister, and David Ferry, whom he stated were in Mancuso's almost daily in the 544 Camp Street building. Quiroga went to Oswald's home in August of 63 to gain information about the FPCC. He was interviewed on February 22nd, 1978 by Daly. Sergio Arkasha Smith, New Orleans delegate to the Cuban Revolutionary Council with offices at 544 Camp Street. Investigator Brown indicates that this interview has not been written up. But apparently, those people have been interviewed, but not written up yet. Leighton Martins, who was an associate of Sergio Arkasha Smith, friend of David Ferry, if you know what I mean, interviewed by Bill Brown on January 24th, 1978. Frank Barthez assumed leadership of the CRC after Arkasha was relieved of his duties, conducted affairs of the council from his home, interviewed by Brown on 3/15/78. Ronnie Kerr, associate of Arkasha Smith. Kerr owned an advertising firm and worked with Arkasha to raise money for Cuban relief. Interviewed by Brown on April 13th, 78. Can't find it indexed in the system, though. Jack Martin worked as an investigator for Guy Banister, interviewed by Burris and Delsa on several occasions and made statements to the effect that he had seen Oswald with Ferry at Camp Street. Also in this interview, Martin identified Leighton Martins and Carlos Quiroga as persons in 544 Camp Street offices and said FBI agent Regis Kennedy was a frequent visitor to Banister's office. Martin further states that Thomas Beckham was in Banister's office to see Martin and that he knew Sergio Arkasha Smith as well. Sam Newman, owner of the building located at 544 Camp Street, interviewed by Daly February 14th, Happy Valentine's Day, 1978, has no records. Mary Banister Wilson, wife of Guy Banister, contacted by telephone on April 6, 78 by Burris. Mrs. Wilson stated she had no files of her former husband left in her possession. Jack Mancuso, owner of the restaurant and bar in 544 Camp Street, knew Banister, Ferry, and Martin as regular customers. Does never not recall that Oswald was ever with them in the restaurant. Interviewed by Daly, January 26, 78. Anna Stewart, acting treasurer for the local 166 of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Bartenders Union, whose offices were located in 544 Camp Street in 1963. Contacted by Daly on April 11th and supplied him with a membership record for 1962 through 64. Of interest, guess whose name is there? It's part of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees and Bartenders Union, Carrie Thornley. Doesn't it mean he was ever at 544 Camp Street, but that's, whatever. Ross Banister, brother of Guy Banister, interviewed by Daly on January 20th, 1978, in connection with the occupants of 544 Camp Street and location of his brother's files. Russell Willey, also known as Major Wiley, a former Louisiana State Police officer referred to Investigator Burris by Ross Banister. Burris has been unable to make an appointment to talk to Willey about Banister records and Willey's knowledge of the occupants of 544 Camp Street. Will not answer the phone, never calls back. Carlos Quiroga became acquainted with Sergio Arkasha, blah, blah, blah. Quiroga stated that the usual daily routine was for Smith, David Lewis, Jack Martin, David Ferry, and himself to go to Mancuso's restaurant for coffee. Smith usually went to Banister's office to talk on an almost daily basis. The last time Quiroga saw Oswald was when he visited Oswald's house to obtain, not bring, PCC literature to him. Whatever, dude. He does not place Oswald in the 544 Camp Street office building and identifies Ruby only from having seen pictures of him. Right? So it goes on about all these people that they talk to. And this is their conclusion. This is their analysis and conclusion, Joe.
Okay.
No definitive conclusion can be reached until all persons have been interviewed and reports written up. As of right now, the most solid statement that we have would seem to be that of Carlos Quiroga, who was a daily inhabitant of Mancuso's and knew Banister, Ferry, Arcacha, and Oswald. Since he says that he never saw Lee Harvey Oswald at 544 Camp Street, and his credibility far surpasses that of Jack Martin, it seems reasonable to conclude that Oswald was never at 544 Camp Street or Guy Banister's office. And that's the HSCA's official position on that. Okay. Now, one name that I did not mention here yet, Joe, is Mary Helen Bringle. You ever heard of her?
I have not.
All right. She was the secretary in Guy Banister's 544 Camp Street office from October to December of 63. She was interviewed by Marty Daly in April of 78, but the results of the interview have not been written up. Mrs. Bringle taped the interview and gave the tape to Daly, who reports that its quality is so piss poor that it cannot be used. And he forgets what he talked to her about. Now, why is that important? Well, I'll tell you. So, fast forward, Joe, to the Assassination Records and Review Board. Okay?
Okay.
November 6, 1994. Gentlemen, I am advised that you will hold a public hearing in Dallas on November 18th at 10 a.m. at the Earl Cabell Federal Building on Commerce Street. I believe I have special knowledge of some matters related to the assassination that have not been made a part of the public record, and which are outlined in the enclosed article which I wrote a number of years ago after I moved from New Orleans to Dallas in 1968. I was interviewed momentarily on nationwide television last October, but very little of this information was made public in my television interview. I am a full-time computer operator for Mega Student Insurance Division here in Dallas, and will take time off from work only if my presence is necessary and requested. My home telephone number is blah, blah, blah. I can be reached at work at blah, blah, blah. Ask the operator to page me as I do not have my own extension. I have an answer machine on my home phone, and though it will take a message, there is no voice on it as it was affected recently by lightning. Please let me know if my presence is needed or if I can be of further assistance. Yours very truly, Mrs. Mary Helen Bringle. Okay? So, of course, they're interested. Okay? So here is the article that Mary Helen Bringle wrote in 1968, entitled, Joe, The Kennedy Assassination. Okay? In the summer of that ill-fated year of 1963, the Independent American, a newspaper where I had worked for 4 years, was moving from New Orleans to Littleton, Colorado. I had served as assistant editor, but planning to remain in New Orleans so my boys, Bob and Ted, could continue in the local schools. I registered with just about every employment agency in the city, seeking a new job. Had I foreseen that I would become involved with a shadowy group of people who would later figure into the Kennedy assassination hearings, I would not have remained in the Crescent City. But I had no such premonition of this. Guy Banister, a retired FBI man, operated both a private detective agency and Joe, get this, a hiring agency for pier watchmen for the Port of New Orleans. Didn't know that. Through mutual friends, he had heard of my plight and suggested I use his office to receive calls for job interviews. And at the same time, for a small hourly wage and some D on the side, help his I added the last part. Help his secretary, Delphine Roberts, index the office filing system. I never could determine what his secretary was doing to that system, or why Banister allowed her to accumulate and elaborately cross-reference in such cabinets as were not kept under lock and key reams of Gerald L.K. Smith literature, The Thunderbolt, and similar publications I viewed as anti-American propaganda and pure trash. Then one day, Banister dictated to me a letter to Carlos Marcello, the mafia boss, offering to help him in connection with the government's efforts to deport him. I expressed surprise that any conservative would actually be helping this participant in organized crime. He replied that the principles being violated by the Marcello deportation would harm our system of government and the country as a whole. Never again did he dictate correspondence to me, nor did he ever open his banks of locked files in my presence. Guy Banister was white-haired and reserved, somewhat resembling actor Charles Bickford, while Delphine, a divorcee, was sharp-featured and shrill-voiced. Delphine confided that they were engaged.
Well, I think we did cover like something about a couple episodes.
I didn't know they were engaged, though. That's crazy.
Well, I think we like talked about an allegation that like Banister was going to break up with his wife for Delphine at some point. Maybe.
Well, they had already split. I don't know if they were divorced yet, but they had already split. Banister was living in a little shitty apartment, which I'll show you here in a minute. Hold on. All right. So Delphine confided that they were engaged, although it became apparent that Guy, though separated, was not divorced from his wife yet. I am convinced that my presence had been sought as a protection for Delphine Roberts in the event that Mrs. Banister ever visited the office and tried to hurt her.
Wow.
You remember what Janet told us about Mary Banister ordering a hit on a guy in prison, right?
Yeah.
So maybe she was a tough cookie. Stacked against one office wall.
The guy wouldn't surprise me, right?
Yeah. Were a number of rifles, 10 or 12 of them with all their fittings. Delphine said these represented Guy's hobby, and he had no room for the collection in his new bachelor apartment. Periodically, men would come to see him, and they would speak in hushed tones as they handled, sighted, and hefted the guns, apparently discussing their relative merits. There was little business in the office aside from a continual stream of men seeking employment on guard duty. I couldn't understand how Banister could pay office rent and salaries, but was told the government was considering his appointment as head of security forces for a Mississippi test site.
Test site.
Yeah, apparently he had I don't know if he applied for being the head of security for a Mississippi testing site for the government. I don't know. He says Banister drove a green sedan, and now and then a young man, clad in coveralls and looking like a mechanic, would come by to report that he had filled the tank with gas, put in needed oil, and checked the tires. All for Guy Banister. Later, I was to learn that the car did not belong to Banister, but to the mother of the, quote, mechanic, who turned out to be Banister's attorney. From the date of the Kennedy assassination, Banister never again drove the green sedan he had used exclusively for several months, and never again was the gun collection in his office after the assassination. On the day of the assassination, Banister was out of the office. Delphine said he had gone to the Mississippi test site with another FBI man, and that he headed the group of retired FBI men in the New Orleans area. That morning, the morning of the assassination, for the only time during the months that I had been present, the secretary brought a pocket radio to work. The telephone rang mid-morning, and Delphine advised that the president had been shot and turned on her radio. The moment Kennedy's death was announced, she jumped up from her desk. "Oh, he's dead! He's dead! He's dead! He's dead!" she sang, pirouetting and dancing around the office with her arms high in the air, her skirt swirling about her like a tiny dancer. I'm joking, Tiny. I'm sure you're nothing like Delphine.
Might not be far off.
I myself, a strong opponent, you better watch it. A strong opponent of Kennedy's policies was stunned at her actions. He had been our president, and in my mind was due the respect of his office until and unless that could be changed by constitutional means. What did Delphine's actions reveal? Did she have some advanced knowledge of the assassination plot? Where was Guy Banister on that day? Was he at the Mississippi test site? Really? Or could the green sedan have been behind a grassy knoll by a railroad track near a triple underpass in some city in Texas? Later, I would wonder about these things, he says. Delphine told me that both Lee Harvey Oswald and David Ferry, as well as others who figured in the government hearings, had been in the office many times while I worked there. News pictures of Lee Harvey Oswald showed him directly in front of our office on Lafayette Street. A few weeks later, I found the job that I wanted, not as a secretary, but as an office manager and bookkeeper for a large New Orleans architectural firm. There I worked until 1968, when my sons completed high school and were drafted into the armed forces. I then returned to Dallas, where my family lived. Banister, who remained a mystery to me, had died in the summer following the assassination, supposedly of a heart attack. On Saturday in June, when conservative groups had planned a rally in Audubon Park, Delphine and Banister were supposed to join us. Unable to reach him, we telephoned Delphine, who told us that he had died during the night just past. When he failed to answer her call, she had gone to his apartment with an FBI man and found him. Why, I had wondered, had she thought it necessary to be accompanied by an FBI man?
Yeah.
When Mrs. Banister was questioned about funeral arrangements, she replied, "There will be no funeral, Joe. I'll put him in a box, shut the fucking lid, and put him in the ground, and that'll be it." Quote Mary Banister.
Wow.
Damn. Okay, but all
she must
all
have
this
been
has
really
been told.
pissed at Delphine or Guy for Delphine.
You reckon? But all of this has been told first to a local FBI when Banister's name and picture appeared in the New Orleans papers in regard to his possible connection with the assassination, and later to Martin Daly, an interview for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, who questioned me at length. The BBC, not the big black, you know what, Joe, but the British Broadcasting Company, interviewed me by telephone from Washington and made an appointment to send the representative Anthony Summers to New Orleans to interview me. Daly and Summers told me that each of their committees had searched diligently for Delphine Roberts, but neither had been able to find her. At about that time, however, the hearings conducted by the House of Representatives were cut short, and the BBC instructed their team to return to Great Britain. Summers called to cancel our appointment, informing me that Delphine had been found. She had remarried and was living in New Orleans under a new assumed name. Delphine told reporters that Banister had been at the Mississippi test site the day of the assassination, and that the two of them first heard of the tragedy as they listened to the radio together that evening. And I recalled that vision of Delphine whirling around the damn office, her arms above her head and her skirts eddying about her as she sang of Kennedy's death. He's dead. He's dead. Kennedy is dead. I've never seen the 26-volume report of the Kennedy assassination hearings published by the House Select. I think she's got that confused there with the Warren Commission report, 26 volumes, but the testimony I'd given to Martin Daly was published in the hearings. Anthony Summers, the BBC reporter, has since written a book entitled Conspiracy, in which he refers to my testimony as he found it in the committee hearings report. On the dust jacket of the book, Summers states, it is certainly possible that a renegade element in the U.S. intelligence manipulated Oswald, whatever his role on November 22nd, 1963, and that same element may be activated pawns in the anti-Castro movement and the mafia to murder the president. Blah, blah, blah. So she says, all right, why? It is my personal belief that there will never be a true solution, that for every truth uncovered, there will be innumerable debunking teams, more unexplainable deaths. Until and unless our government in some day free of every vestige of corruption, I do not believe the people will ever know the truth. Again, I ask, where was Guy Banister on November 22nd, 1963? Was he in a green sedan on a grassy knoll in a city in Texas? Delphine Roberts knows the answer, but I can't believe her. Can you? Oogie boogie, right?
Wow.
Now, we know Guy Banister was in New Orleans on the evening of November 22nd, 1963. I highly doubt he made the long drive from Dallas to New Orleans. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he would be like operational.
Yeah. I mean, she's operating off pure speculation there, for sure. But again, she was in the office from the right time period from October to December of 63. And to see Delphine hear the assassination on a pocket radio and be dancing around the office like that, because it would have been at 12:30 in Dallas, it would have been 11:30 in Louisiana. Right?
Yeah.
And where was Guy Banister? Supposedly at this test site. He didn't go drinking with Jack Martin until later that evening at the Katzenjammer, right? And I got one final thing for you, Joe.
All right, give it to me.
That's what she said. All right. This right here, Joe, is the house, the apartment that Guy Banister passed away in. And his apartment, I believe, was D, which is the bottom one. Apparently, there are 6 apartments in this building. Apartment A, D, and B are on the front. And B is the one, I believe, on the bottom left there where you see the door. Okay. Now, I happen to have an interior shot of this, which would be as soon as you open the front door. Okay. You see the window to the left. That is the kitchen, about halfway back there. And then a long hallway, which there are a lot of rooms off of. Okay. Now, remember when we talked about Delphine Roberts looking in the window and seeing Guy Banister laying on the couch? It's quite possible that this window on the left here is the one that she looked in and saw him as he lay there on the couch dead, right?
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I have here, Joe, this is when Guy was living at 1031 Mall Street, apartment B. Okay, so this is the right apartment. This is the right house. Okay. And this is, what is this? I don't know what this is, to be honest with you. It's a report made on June 6, 1964 at 7:35 p.m. Okay.
Yeah.
and it's about Guy Banister's death. So I think it's a report from the responding officers once they called the cops, right?
Right, because
So this
I
is
think we went over, like, she went to the apartment, and she had called, and then she brought the FBI agent with her. She was very scared about going in alone for whatever reason.
well, she thought that Banister didn't die a natural death. She thought he'd been killed, and she didn't think it was because of his connections to the Kennedy assassination. She thought it was retaliation, from people in the police department.
Right. Because of his investigation into the corruption.
Right.
Right.
So this is, like I said, it's a one-page report. It's pretty gruesome, so hang with me. Undersigned Sergeant G. Drum and Detective D. Kent report at 7:35 Saturday, June 6, 1964, of receiving notification via Channel B from Car 16 that they were investigating the death of one W. Guy Banister at 1031 Moss Street, Apartment B, and were asking for our assistance. We arrived at 7:48 p.m. and proceeded to the downstairs apartment number B, where we met Sergeant A. Polito in company with officers F. Hayward, Wilson, recruit Busby, and ID Division Tech Steve. On the scene was coroner's chauffeur C. Graves, who remained outside until we were done. Learned from the above officers that they received the above call at 6 p.m. and upon their arrival noted the deceased to be one W. Guy Banister. Undersigned observed a combination living/bedroom with a kitchen area close by, which we can see in the picture, right? Noted on the sofa bed a white male subject lying diagonally across the bed, face down, and slightly on his left side in a natural sleeping position. We noticed advanced stages of post-mortem livor mortis about the lower portions of the person on the bed, and he was apparently dead. Deceased was clad only in a pair of light blue boxer undershorts. Observed a pair of white undershorts on the floor alongside of the double sofa bed, which contained dried smears of apparent feces.
What?
Noted an orange towel on the bed along the side of the stomach of the deceased, and it was noted that the deceased had his right hand beneath the towel. Officers noted that the main room was in an untidy state. However, there was nothing that indicated that anything unusual or violent had occurred in it. A pair of eyeglasses, an ashtray, and several other articles were on the night table beside the bed. Learned from one Delphine Roberts, the secretary-treasurer of Banister Associates, that about 6:20, she went to the residence. She was unable to get any acknowledgement from her phone calls, and that she last saw Mr. Banister at about 7 p.m. the night before at her home on Warple Street, and he had complained to her that he was not feeling well at the time. Stated that she telephoned his apartment several times and received no response there either. Further stated that she had proceeded to 5202 something Street, where she informed Mr. and Mrs. I.E. Nitschke, a former FBI associate of Mr. Banister, and they all proceeded back to Moss Street.
Yeah, that's who she brought with.
Yeah,
the FBI Nitschke. It was like worked with Banister in the past. Yeah.
Yep. Nitschke forced open the front screen door and gained entrance to the apartment and discovered Banister to be apparently dead and in the same position as on the arrival of the undersigned. The undersigned examined another door to the apartment and found it also to be locked from the inside. Identification Division Tech Steve on scene and photographed. Coroner's Office investigator Sam Moran was on scene and conducted his own investigation. Orleans Parish Coroner Dr. Nicholas Chetta arrived on the scene and after examining the remains pronounced the body dead at 8 p.m. The coroner's chauffeur, Oral Graves, conveyed the body to the city morgue in the mortuary wagon. Recovered and retained by Sam Moran from the pants pocket of the deceased. Here's where it gets interesting, Joe.
Okay.
Hang on. I got a little froggy in my throat. Now, we've all heard, right, of Banister's money problems. How he was behind on his rent. He didn't have no money to pay people back. He couldn't pay his rent, right? Apparently, he didn't have a car. Check this out. Recovered and retained by Sam Moran from the pants pocket of the deceased were 28 $10 bills. Now, what's that?
$280, about like $3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money for somebody who doesn't have any fucking money, right? Allegedly.
Yes. Yeah.
5 $1 bills along with 6 nickels and 1 penny. The above pair of trousers were laying on a small table across from the bed. A matching suit coat and white dress shirt were hung on the back of a chair at the foot of the bed. Moran also recovered. Apparently, there's another page to this that I don't have. But, yeah. So if that's what was in his pocket, what was in his wallet? What did he maybe have in the nightstand? What did he have in the bank? If he's walking around with $3,000 in his pocket, Joe, I mean, he's balling.
Yeah.
If I'm walking around with $3,000 in my pocket, I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. You know what I'm saying?
I don't walk around with $3,000 in my pocket ever.
No. If you do, you are doing some dirty shit.
Right.
For sure. So it's an awful lot of money for somebody to have that supposedly didn't have any. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So, because I think rent at 544 Camp Street back then was like $20 a month or something ridiculous. He could have paid for a year of rent with that money. So something is not adding up here, Joel. I don't understand what it is exactly, but
no, it is not.
I don't understand. It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, and I think Delphine said that when we went over what she described when finding Guy Banister, he was like on his stomach in kind of shorts, and what you just read kind of corroborated that, right? Like on his stomach.
Yeah, but why are you going to include the man had some dirty drawers on the floor? And Guy Banister should have known better than to wear white drawers. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that might have been the thing back then, you know.
Well, he had on light blue ones when he was, lying there on the couch. I bet Big Tex here don't wear white drawers.
Probably not. No, probably not.
And thanks to Mike Alpha66 for this lovely picture of Big Tex.
Yeah.
He was apparently at the Texas State Fair. He's apparently a very big dude. I asked Mike, I wonder if he's got a big hog underneath that belt buckle as well. To which Mike stated, well, if you have big hands and big feet, probably so. But Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Mike, for the big text and his big belt buckle in the big D. And that's about it for tonight, Joe. It's about time to call in Dean Andrews and dance us out of this piece.
All right, Dino.
Oh, hold the phone.
Whoa.
We forgot one very important part of the show, Joe.
What is that, sir?
And that is, I wanted to discuss disappointments with you a little bit. Now, Joe, I went to go see the Joker 2 last week when it opened. The night before it opened, actually, last Thursday. And I don't know what the bigger disappointment was, the Joker 2 or Jefferson Morley's bombshell JFK assassination announcement press conference behind the paywall. Now let's talk about this supposed. Now look, the Joker 2 really sucked, and I mean really. Like I was this close to getting up and walking out. You know, if you enjoy musicals that are 2 hours and 20 minutes long, maybe it's the movie for you. I don't know, but to me it sucked, and the ending sucked, and I left bitter. Much the same reaction as I had when I found out what Jefferson Morley's giant bombshell announcement was. And Joe, for the people out there that aren't privy to the Jefferson Morley bombshell announcement or the news behind his paywall over at Substack, please let everyone know what the bombshell announcement was and why it sucked.
Sure. So, I follow Jefferson Morley on Twitter. He's obviously one of the most mainstream JFK researchers there are. He was, a former Washington Post writer. He's
a name.
Yeah. A big swinging thing. And
yes.
And done a lot of great work. You know, if you think about Jane Roman, Joanides. Yeah, no, I mean, like no hate here whatsoever. But
well, you speak for yourself.
He had
I'm still bitter about the 14-minute gap. But pray continue.
I know. And he had been hyping this quote bombshell for a few days before it was released, and saying it's going to be bigger than anything he had ever released. And
you're going to talk all this shit. You're going to have a press conference, Joe.
Yes.
A press conference to announce this giant bombshell in the case.
But only journalists, working ones, Rob, were invited. So, I mean, we might call ourselves JFK journalists because we go live every week. And
I do have a press lanyard somewhere.
But
me and Doug made.
But and I share your sentiment, Rob. And we were texting about this on our group chat with you, me, and Doug, and we were kind of excited. Like it was billed as like a groundbreaker, and it ended up being hearsay of a CIA whistleblower who saw, I guess, a box of something that said Mexico City, tapes, pictures, and essentially it came from an unknown source. And it was very disappointing, I have to say. I thought,
somebody somewhere told me a story that they saw something somewhere, but they didn't actually look in it and see if that something was there. There is the bombshell announcement.
Yeah.
Tune in next week when we talk to a fascinating descendant of somebody very important to the case, and they're going to drop a bombshell that they found in their house, but they're not willing to share it this time. No, I mean, it's just a whole lot of nada fucking thing.
Yeah, and I agree. And, I'm going to have a little contrarian thing here because obviously I was disappointed. But in retrospect, I don't think it was for researchers because researchers need documents. There were none. And there's now like a PR blitz going on, and the premise was the CIA had a document, kind of like a best uses to just throw off the HSCA, and to us that's nothing new, right? We know Joanides was a plant to throw off the HSCA. We know about their efforts with the War Commission. We know with the Garrison investigation, but
the big thing was about this guy saw a file in an off-site storage facility entitled Oswald in Mexico City.
Yeah,
and it supposedly had video tape in it, allegedly.
Yeah, and
again, this is nothing new, folks, because apparently J. Edgar Hoover saw something on video that he said definitely wasn't Oswald in the video or his voice. So could this be it? Where they just deep sixed this crap and was like, and we've all saw pictures, from the HSCA when they dug up supposed pictures of Oswald, and it was a husky looking Russian guy coming in and out of the Cuban embassy and Russian embassy. So is this just a lot of nothing?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, because for people like us, and this well, if you're going to approach a serious researcher with a theory, you have to have the goods, right? You have to have a document, right? Possibly.
Like, Joe, I get what you're saying, but here's the deal. He looks like a giant scapuza to the world, a very easy target for mainstream media to point at and go, look at this nut job douchebag and his giant announcement that is, bigger than an elephant shit. That's a whole lot of nothing. And that he makes us look crazy by doing something like that, saying you got a whistleblower, a CIA whistleblower, but you don't name names, you don't have any evidence whatsoever back up. And the funny thing is, Joe, they posted a picture of this facility, right? It's in Sterling. It's right across from the Dulles Airport, okay?
Yeah, a SCIF, which is a secure compartmentalized information.
Well, I recognize that, Joe. You know why? I used to go there every Tuesday. I used to deliver oil, Joe, right? And it was part of my regular Tuesday route. I would go up Route 7. I would go, all the way from Leesburg to McLean by the CIA building. But I had to stop in Sterling, right? Mm-hmm. And it just happened to be called Joe's Auto, right? and we sold them bulk motor oil, and I was delivering it. And I would go there every Tuesday and fill this guy's tanks, right? This guy's shop was right across the street from this secure SCIF building. And I always looked at that building and I was like, I wonder what the fuck is in there. Because it was locked down, guarded, barbed wire on the top. It was a secure facility for sure. But right out in the middle of everything, it's right off Route 606, right across from the airport, right? I mean, I used to I would hop in my truck and I would leave Joe's and I would go up and I would park in the parking lot, and I'd be facing this place right? Sometimes I would sit there and eat my lunch. Sometimes, you had to whip it out and pee in a bottle. You know what I'm saying? Because, that's trucker life. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so many times Rob has had his junk out, pointed at this building. Okay, that probably has 20,000 cameras on it. And there's probably dudes in there going, look at this guy. But I'm like, I recognize that building. And I know exactly where it is. And I'm like, okay. But, it's just, to me, respectable, well, not really respectable, mainstream sources can point to Jefferson Bowling and go, see, this is how ridiculous these Kennedy conspiracy theorists are. It's a whole lot about nothing. And it just makes us look like a bunch of idiots. That's my opinion. And I was highly disappointed as a researcher with his announcement, even though it wasn't for me.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. And after thinking about it for a few days, I've come to the conclusion that it wasn't for researchers, because if you
too legit
present
to quit,
something,
baby,
you have a document, right? Like,
you got to have something.
Yeah,
you can't just say some guy and call him a whistleblower. He ain't blowing a whistle. He's too scared to come out and say who he is.
Yeah, and he didn't even look in the box either, right? With the Mexico City,
you don't even know what's in there. It could be an empty box and nothing.
It
could be a dildo in the box for all we know. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, very disappointing. But there's a media blitz going on now, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Believe me, I don't think it was meant for us. I think it was meant for the mainstream media. And
I don't care who it was meant for. It was a freaking dud all the way around.
Listen, I 100% agree with you. I'm just presenting like why he would bill it as bigger than anything he's ever come up with when he's done great work, and then come up with this. It
was a total overreach on his part, in my opinion.
Oh, I
swing
agree.
and a miss. A swing and a miss. And he's pitched to himself and he missed it.
Yeah.
That's how effed up this was.
No, for sure. And all I'm saying is that I don't think at the end of the day, after thinking about this a lot and looking forward to it, you, me, and Doug messaged each other before it came out. And when it came out, I think it was meant for the mainstream media to be like, the HSCA, the CIA is hiding documents from the HSCA. And it's like, okay, like anyone who's studied the case for 10 minutes knows
no meat on that bone whatsoever.
Right. So, listen, if it gets some congressman or senator involved, we've talked about how much the JFK documents have gotten publicity recently, right?
Well said, Douglas.
Yeah. No,
an alleged person allegedly saw a thing in an alleged place, doesn't know what thing allegedly contained, summary complete.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And listen, I'm not really like defending it. Like I already told you my stance on it.
Good point, Will.
If it and that's exactly the word I used in our group chat, Rob. Clickbait.
Yeah, tune in next week because we're gonna have a giant bombshell.
But
it's okay.
Yeah,
every week it's a bombshell on here. You're gonna learn something new,
right?
And it's gonna be supported by actual evidence and documents and testimony, right here on the Lingoman Podcast. Not that place.
Yeah, but last thing I'm going to say, if it somehow increases awareness on the current discussion on the JFK files and this and that, and somehow leads to something, I'm okay with it. And
I've got worse than 6 bobbers.
That was Doug's point, actually, I think, in our chat. But I was disappointed as well. For sure. I think anyone who's a document researcher knows that. So, But
all right, folks.
Yeah, who knows what will come of it.
Well, we're going to get out of here. But before we bring in Dean Andrews, I got one other big surprise for you here this evening.
Ooh.
You're going to get a tour of New Orleans from Jim Garrison before Dean comes into the picture. So enjoy getting toured around New Orleans by Jim Garrison himself. And then Dino will be in the picture, and we will trumpet and trombone our way up out of this piece until next week. So, Jolly Green Giant, take it away, sir. Oh, by the way, I will say it's a little choppy the first 10 minutes, but it clears up, so don't freak out. Okay, back to it.
Oswald was born in New Orleans. After serving in the U.S. Marines and living in Russia, he returned in the summer of 1963 to this area.
We're approaching the old post office building, which is right across the street from the Newman building at 544 Camp Street.
What was there?
Well, this is the address which Lee Oswald gave for his first Fair Play for Cuba pamphlets. Now, this building, 544 Camp Street, is the building in which Guy Banister had his office on the side. Guy Banister, of course, is the most militant right-wing, extremely conservative, anti-communist individual in the city of New Orleans. There is simply no question about the fact that the Riley Coffee Company was a nesting place for Lee Oswald. He was put here. This was his CIA assignment. In other words, as I pointed out before, his immediate superiors in Dallas and his immediate superiors in the CIA in New Orleans are involved in the assassination. Not might be, they are involved. And consequently, the impression was created on his part that he was following orders and he just had to stay at the Riley Coffee Company until a time came when he was to penetrate the right-wing operation here, and in the course of doing that, to go through these motions of being a left-wing individual, a communist. This is one of the bases in New Orleans for United States intelligence operations, and they had a number of intelligence agencies here. We've confirmed at least one was here, so Oswald had been placed across the street, where he was obviously in some sort of contact with them. And then if you go around to the right, there's Riley Coffee Company. Here's the old post office building where U.S. intelligence agencies operated from. And if you go over here, you can see two men opening a truck. Now, if you go line over the truck, there's a white building. And that white building is the Newman building, which is at 544 Camp Street. And as I said earlier, that's where Guy Banister's office was. And David Ferry hung around in Guy Banister's office. And of course, Lee Oswald has been seen in Guy Banister's office.
The Garrison case began last February with David Ferry, a strange man, commercial pilot, private detective, anti-Castro fighter, and bishop of an offbeat cult. Ferry said Garrison had fingered him as the getaway pilot in the plot. 4 days later, he died mysteriously in this house. Here, according to Garrison, Oswald met Ferry and members of the Minutemen, a secret and violent group who train with bombs and machine guns to kill communists. After Ferry's death, 2 Minutemen arrived and took away papers. Paying parish prison. He dare not talk for the record, but, he said, come to Bourbon Street and I'll show you what I think of the case.
Same announcement.
The greatest lies are told in the name of truth. The greatest crimes are committed in the name of justice. The quotation is Jim Garrison's. It could be used for him or against him in this strange case. Good night.